This lecture covers Chapter 8, which is going to be Web Server Hardware and Software. So let's look at those learning modules for this chapter. Restate how a web server performs its basic functions, describe management of email and spam control issues, explain how commonly used internet and website utility programs work, identify hardware online businesses use to power their websites, explain how cloud computing and content delivery networks provide new web infrastructure. So what is a web server, and why do we need to learn about it in electronic commerce? A web server's main job is to respond to web client requests. Main elements in meeting client requests are hardware, operating system software, and web server software. Client-server architectures are used in LANs, WANs, and the web. Server computers have more memory and are larger and have faster disk drives than the client computers that they serve. A web browser is a type of web client software. Platform neutrality is the ability of a network to connect devices using different operating systems, which is important because we can all use different operating systems and still access the information. There are multiple meanings of server. So, a server is any computer providing files or making programs available to other computers connected to it through a network. Server software makes files and programs available. It may be part of the operating system and referred to as server software, which can get a little confusing. Some servers are connected to the internet via a router. Email server handles incoming and outgoing email. Database server runs database management software. Transaction server runs accounting and inventory management software. And server describes several types of computer hardware and software. The context is needed to determine the intended meaning of the word when we use it. So let's talk about web client server architectures. Web browsers request files from web servers and use the internet as a transportation medium. Requests are formatted by browsing using HTTP and sent to server computer. Server receives the request, retrieves the requested web page file, formats using HTTP, and sends back to the client over the internet. Client web browser software displays the page. Web pages with graphics can be slow because each page element requires a separate request and response. And so when we use a website, this process is just happening over and over with every click. The basic model is a two-tier client-server architecture, one client and one server computer, but that's not usually that likely to happen. The request message is a web client message sent to request files from a web server that consists of three major parts. So the request line contains a command, a target resource name, protocol name, version number, and server receiving the request message executes the command included in the message. It retrieves the web page file from the disk and creates a response message to send it back to the client. Identical in structure to request messages, slightly different in the function. Three-tier architecture allows additional processing before the server responds to the client's request. Often includes databases and related software applications that supply information to the web server. Web server uses software applications output when responding to the client request. An in-tier architecture has more than three tiers. It tracks customer purchases stored in shopping carts, look up sales tax rates, keeps track of customer preferences, update in stock inventory on the databases, and it keeps the product catalog current. And so we're going to see this a lot now. Some of those others were previously used more. Now any shopping site is really going to have the in-tier architecture so that they can keep those product catalogs current because people are trying to make those purchases, and also you need your software to be pretty intuitive when dealing with customers. We are in the dynamic content generation, and a static page is an unchanging page retrieved from stored web server files. So if I just made an information-only page, there's no interactive items on it, that would be static. Dynamic page is created in response to the user request. So these are customized pages that give users an interactive experience. Client-side scripting software operates on the web client browser, and changes web page display in response to the user's actions. Server-side scripting program runs on the web server and creates web page in response to request or specific information from the web client. Software tools to create dynamic web pages include Microsoft ASP.NET, Apache Software Foundation, Hypertext Preprocessor, and Adobe Cold Fusion. Ajax is asynchronous JavaScript and XML. It creates interactive websites that look like applications. Many websites use more than one language and or development framework to accomplish specific tasks. So operating systems for web servers. Operating systems tasks include running programs, allocating computer resources to programs, and proving input and output services. This is required for a computer to run programs. Web server operating systems software run on Microsoft's Windows Server products, Linux, or Unix-based operating systems. Some companies consider Microsoft operating systems simpler to use than Unix-based systems, but there are some concerns about security weaknesses with Microsoft. Linux is open source, it's fast, it's efficient, it's easy to install. It can be downloaded for free from the web, but most companies buy it through a commercial distributor for the additional utilities and support. Oracle sells web server hardware with its Unix-based operating system, Solaris. Web server software is commonly used with, the commonly used programs are Apache HTTP Server and Microsoft Internet Information Server. Some businesses, such as Google, wrote their own. Apache has been the dominant web server software since 1996. It's free and user-supported with other services available. Let's talk about email. So, email is used to gather information, execute transactions, and perform electronic commerce tasks. However, there are some drawbacks. Reasons people originally were attracted to the internet often had to do with email, the ability to send and receive messages, especially with attachments, very quickly. It's the most popular form of business communication. Email attachments can contain computer viruses sometimes, though, and one of the most frustrating parts about email is spam. 2009 was the peak year for spam. In one 24-hour period, it showed 220 billion spam emails sent. Spam growth has leveled off now. There have been legal and technological solutions that continue to try to reduce spam. Benefits are reaped by spammers, so it's still attractive. So they'll continue to spam as long as it's still beneficial for the spammers. Content filtering is the main way for fighting spam. And so content filtering techniques differ in terms of content elements, examined spam indications, and how strictly messages are classified. Okay, basic content filters examine the email headers. Client level filtering is the individual user's computer, looks at it. Server level filtering is the mail server computers. Blacklist spam filters look for known spammers in incoming messages from addresses. Whitelist spam filters look for good senders from the addresses of incoming messages. Challenge response content filtering compares all incoming messages to a whitelist. If sender is not on the whitelist, it's automated email response sent. That's a challenge. And so the challenge asks the sender to reply to the email response. Reply must contain response to challenge presented in email. Advanced content filtering looks for spam indicators in the entire email message, not just the header. There are also some legal solutions to spam. In January 2004, the U.S. CAN-SPAM law went into effect. Spam decreased for the first 2 months, but returned to previous levels after no threat of federal prosecution. It prohibits misleading email message address header information, deceptive subject headers, and transfer of email addresses. Some spammers have been prosecuted, fined, and received jail time. Many use servers outside the U.S., so we run into jurisdiction issues. Legal solutions have had only limited success. It's expensive to prosecute spammers. Let's talk about website utility programs. So we have TCP/IP supports utility programs or tools. It runs on the web servers or client computers. Email is the earliest internet utility program. Most important utility, it's used every day, all day. It's a key element in electronic commerce strategies. TraceCert and other route tracing programs. TraceCert sends data packets to every computer on the path between one computer and another and clocks packets round trip times. If you remember from a previous lecture, information is sent over the internet in little packets. It provides indication of time message needs to travel from one computer to another and back. Ensures remote computer online and pinpoints data traffic congestion. It calculates and displays the number of hops between computers and the time to traverse an entire one-way path. Telnet and FTP utilities and indexing and searching utilities programs. Telnet program allows a person using one computer to access files and run programs on a second computer connected to the internet. File Transfer Protocol, or FTP, is the part of the TCP/IP rules that defines format used to transfer files between TCP/IP connected computers. Search engines and indexing programs are important elements of many web servers. When a browser requests a website search, engine compares the index terms to the researcher's search terms to find the matching documents. Data analysis software is incredibly important in online business. Web servers capture visitor information and place it into web log files, and those grow quickly. Third-party web log file analysis program summarizes the information in the file. Query log file and return gross summary information or accumulating details. Popular weblog file analysis programs are Adobe Analytics, Google Analytics, and WebTrends. Link checking utilities are used. The dead link displays an error message rather than a web page when clicked. Sites with many dead links are said to have link rot. Link checker utility examines each site page and reports URLs that no longer exist. You can see how this would be important if you had an online business. You want to make sure that when someone clicks a link that they're actually getting where they're supposed to be. The link checker identifies orphan files, which are files on web server that are not linked to any page. It also includes script checking and HTML validation. Adobe Dreamweaver includes link checking program. Freestanding link checking programs include LSOP, LinkScan, and LinksCop. Remote server administration. Website administration controls website from any internet connected to the computer. Monitor server activity and manipulate server from wherever the administrator happens to be. LabTech software includes remote administration, link checking, HTML troubleshooting, site monitoring, and other utility programs. This is useful in managing the operations on the web. Web server hardware. So there's a wide variety of computer brands, types, sizes used by organizations to host online operations. Small companies run websites on desktop PCs, whereas bigger ones, you've seen those pictures of just the huge warehouses of servers. Most online businesses operate on computers designed for site hosting. Businesses select specific hardware and software elements based on site's functionality, expected visitors, number and size of pages, and graphics. The server computers generally have more memory. They're larger, faster, have larger, faster hard disk drives, and faster processors than the typical desktop. Many web server computers use multiple processors. They're also more expensive than your average desktop PC. They may be housed in freestanding cases, but most are installed in equipment racks. Blade servers are servers on a card. Web servers and green computing. So as we're leaning towards green computing, there's some considerations that we need to take in when it comes to energy usage. So there's significant electrical power needed for operating servers and cooling the room where the servers are housed. Green computing is efforts to reduce the environmental impact of large computing installations. Novel approaches using natural cooling. Google server facility is in Finland, Facebook in Sweden. Other companies, go ahead and try to find places that are generally cool already, so that reduces the cooling costs. Web server performance evaluation. Benchmarking is testing to compare hardware and software performance and includes many elements. Hardware, operating system software, server software, connection speed, user capacity, type of web pages delivered, and connection bandwidth. Throughput is the number of HTTP requests hardware and software process in a unit of time. Response time is the time a server requires to process one request. Independent testing and benchmarks are available. Let's look at the web server hardware architectures. Electronic commerce websites use tiered architecture to divide the work of serving web pages. Many use more than one computer within each tier. Server farms are large collections of servers lined up row after row, and those are those big, huge warehouses we've seen pictures of before. Centralized architecture uses a few expensive, fast computers and more sensitive to technical problems. It requires adequate backup plans. Distributed architecture or decentralized architecture uses many less powerful, less expensive computers. This spreads the risk over a large number of servers and requires additional hubs or switches to connect servers to each other and to the internet. It requires cost of load balancing to assign the workload efficiently. Load balancing switch is network hardware that monitors server workloads and assigns incoming web traffic to the server with the most available capacity. Simple load balancing system traffic enters through the site's router and encounters load balancing switch, which directs traffic to the best web server. More complex load balancing systems have incoming web traffic that's directed to groups of dedicated web servers, and then the groups are organized by specific functions. Cloud computing, which many of us are familiar with from the consumer side, cloud computing reduces costs and effort that many businesses are outsourcing entire networks using cloud computing. It allows multiple organizations to share a network of servers and software, giving businesses access to computers, storage, and backup at lower cost. Sometimes called infrastructure as a service, IaaS, or platform as a service, PaaS. Resources can be allocated dynamically as needed. Some larger firms use hybrid cloud computing, move large volume routine work to cloud provider, and maintain more sensitive data and processes internally. Content delivery networks. Latency occurs when a transmission delay is caused by the network inability to handle a full traffic load. Sometimes we see this from the consumer side when a big sale happens and the web servers can't handle all of that traffic. Now from the business side, preparing for that and making sure that you're able to handle that full traffic load is very important. So it's a problem that businesses run into, that they rely on the internet to deliver large audio and video files to customers as well. To prevent latency, online businesses have turned to content delivery networks, service that stores large file contents on multiple servers throughout the internet for a fee. Large file requests are routed to the nearest server with a stored copy of the file. Okay, so I know that had a lot of technical stuff in it, and we covered a lot very quickly. I wanted to briefly touch on the information. The main points are how web servers perform, management of email and spam, how commonly used internet and website utility programs work, how servers work and what the point of them are, and how cloud computing and content delivery networks provide infrastructure that can be used in different ways to be able to handle those different amounts of website traffic. In this course, we only need to have a brief overview of this information and how to apply the information. If you want to learn more about the specifics of hardware and software, web servers, then chapter 8 in the book goes into more detail. And that sums it up for this chapter. So if you have any questions, just let me know.